My name is Philip Hopkins, and I've been published in the Phoenix for, after this next issue comes out, it'll be twice. Last spring, I had a short story published called Den of Vipers, and in this upcoming issue, I have a poem called When She Hands Me the Envelope. My poem is inspired by true events. I have a brother who's currently serving prison time. A sort of snapshot of myself, my mother, and him, and sort of our relationships. It's really it's one of those poems that I didn't really plan on being fairly complex, but when it finally came out, and I'm still tinkering with it, but it came out being much more complex. I think that often happens with a lot of poetry and even short stories. At least in my case, I'll start out with a very simple idea, but then as you keep on working it, it keeps on building and taking on a life of its own. It's almost like a snowball. Sometimes that initial inspiration is just a ball, and then you get it rolling downhill, and other things just start packing onto it until finally you just have this big thing, and you have to figure out exactly what you want to do with it. As far as influences, I suppose that really probably the author that first made me think to myself, hey, this writing thing is something that maybe I could do, was probably Dostoevsky. When I was in high school, just on a whim, I picked up a copy of Notes from Underground, and it was such a shattering read, especially at that age. So full of angst and sarcasm and whatnot, that I was also reading a lot of other things at that time. I was reading Nietzsche and Hermann Hesse at the time, so the real heavy European stuff. So but I guess I thought to myself, at times I had the feeling that these authors, even though they're from, were born and lived and wrote, many, many years before I was ever even born, it felt like they were digging these thoughts out of my own head and polishing them and giving them back to me. And I guess in some way I thought to myself, well, if this person can take the stuff that's inside of me and polish it and give it to the world, then what's stopping me from being able to do it myself? But since then, I probably read mostly American fiction and poetry. Hemingway's a big influence. I also read a lot of genre stuff, crime novels like Elmore Leonard and Dashiell Hammett and James Elroy. And as far as poets, I'm still learning about the poets that are out there. In the poetry class I have right now, advanced poetry with Art Smith, we've been reading a lot of Jack Gilbert and Ruth Stone and Fernando Pessoa, and I've really enjoyed all three of those. Prior to this, most of my exposure to poetry has been some of the classic Americans like Walt Whitman and Cummings and even some of the beats like Allen Ginsberg. So I'm you know, right now really in the process of kind of broadening my reading experience in that area specifically. But it's really is an honor to be published in the Phoenix. It's nice to see that one of the things about UT that hasn't changed is that there's still a Phoenix, and students are still working on it and turning things in, and yeah.